You've been running from something your entire life. You know what it is. That hollow ache in your chest when you're alone. The weight that settles on your shoulders when the noise stops. The voice that whispers you're not enough, that you're weak, that you're failing at this thing called living. Most people spend decades building walls against this pain. They numb it with endless scrolling, drown it in productivity, bury it under the weight of other people's expectations. They construct elaborate performances of happiness, success, normalcy, anything to avoid sitting with what hurts. But what if I told you that the very thing you're running from is the source of your power? What if the pain you've been avoiding is actually the key to becoming who you're meant to be? Friedrich Nietzsche understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to grasp. He saw that our greatest weakness isn't our suffering, it's our refusal to suffer meaningfully. In the autumn of 1888, Nietzsche wrote letters from Turin, Italy, describing a revelation that would shake the foundations of Western thought. He had discovered something terrifying about human nature, something that would make him infamous, misunderstood, and ultimately, prophetic. He saw that most people live their entire lives in what he called the herd mentality, following rules, seeking comfort, avoiding anything that might disturb their fragile sense of security. They mistake numbness for peace, conformity for wisdom, and avoidance for strength. But Nietzsche had walked through a different door. He had embraced what he called amor fati, love of fate. Even when fate brought crushing loneliness, chronic illness, and the kind of psychological torment that would drive most people to madness. Look around you. Look at the faces on the subway, in the coffee shops, at your workplace. How many of them seem truly alive? How many have that spark of authentic power that comes from knowing who they really are? Most are sleepwalking through existence, anesthetized by comfort, weakened by the very safety they've built around themselves. They've created lives so padded with distractions that they never have to face the fundamental questions that would transform them. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you actually want, beneath all the noise of what you think you should want? What would you become if you stopped running from the parts of yourself that scare you? Nietzsche believed that true power comes not from avoiding suffering, but from transforming it. He called this process becoming who you are, but the path requires walking through fire. Think about the last time you felt truly alive. I mean really alive, not just happy or comfortable, but electric with possibility. Chances are, it wasn't during a moment of ease. It was probably when you were pushing against something difficult, when you were forced to confront a truth about yourself you'd been avoiding, when you had to choose between staying small and stepping into something larger. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the will to power. Not power over others, that's the weak person's interpretation, but power over yourself. The ability to transform your suffering into strength, your pain into wisdom, your failures into fuel. He wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." But this isn't some motivational poster philosophy. It's a recognition that the human spirit has an almost infinite capacity for transformation if we're willing to stop running from what hurts. Consider the story of Nietzsche's own life. Chronic migraines that left him bedridden for days. Social isolation that bordered on complete loneliness. The weight of ideas so revolutionary that his contemporaries dismissed him as mad. His books barely sold during his lifetime. He watched his body and mind deteriorate while his greatest works went unread. A weaker man would have broken. A comfortable man would have settled for less. But Nietzsche transformed his suffering into some of the most powerful philosophy ever written. His pain became his palette. His isolation became his laboratory. His rejection became his fuel. He understood that the modern world had created a crisis of meaning. People were becoming increasingly disconnected from authentic suffering, and therefore from authentic growth. They were medicating away their depression instead of asking what their depression was trying to tell them. They were avoiding failure instead of learning from it. They were seeking comfort instead of seeking truth. But comfort is the enemy of growth. Safety is the enemy of transformation. And avoiding pain is the enemy of becoming powerful. Nietzsche saw that most people live what he called the last man existence, seeking only pleasure, avoiding all difficulty, never risking anything that might disturb their equilibrium. They become weak not because they suffer, but because they refuse to suffer meaningfully. The powerful person, what Nietzsche called the Übermensch or Overman, doesn't avoid pain. They dance with it. They use it. They transform it into something beautiful and terrible and true. Here's what Nietzsche discovered that most people never will. Your pain is not your enemy. Your pain is information. It's your psyche's way of telling you that something needs to change. Something needs to grow. Something needs to ditch so that something else can be born. The depression you feel isn't a malfunction. It's your soul's rebellion against a life that doesn't fit who you really are. The anxiety that keeps you awake isn't a disorder. It's your unconscious mind screaming that you're living someone else's script. The loneliness that cuts so deep isn't a failure. It's the price of refusing to be authentic in a world that rewards performance. But here's the terrifying part. To transform your pain into power, you have to stop running from it. You have to turn around and face it. You have to ask it what it wants from you. This is what separates the powerful from the powerless. The powerful don't have less pain. They have a different relationship with pain. They don't see it as something to be avoided or fixed or medicated away. They see it as raw material for transformation. When you stop running from your pain, something extraordinary happens. You realize that most of what you thought would destroy you actually makes you stronger. You discover that you're capable of far more than you imagined. You find that your capacity for joy is directly proportional to your capacity for suffering. The person you're afraid to become, the one who feels deeply, who risks greatly, who refuses to settle for the comfortable lie, that person is waiting on the other side of your pain. But you can't reach them by going around the pain. You can only reach them by going through it. This is why Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." Most people will never pay this price. They'll choose the tribe over truth, comfort over growth, numbness over aliveness. They'll spend their lives wondering why they feel so empty, so disconnected, so fundamentally unfulfilled. But you're not most people. You're here listening to this, which means something in you recognizes that there's another way. Something in you knows that your pain isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Your suffering isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. Your struggles aren't evidence of your weakness. They're the raw material of your strength. The question isn't whether you'll suffer. You will. The question is whether you'll suffer meaningfully or meaninglessly. Whether you'll let your pain transform you or diminish you. Whether you'll become powerful or remain comfortable. Nietzsche spent his life showing us that the choice is always ours. We can live as the last man, seeking only pleasure and avoiding all difficulty. Or we can live as the overman, transforming our suffering into strength, our pain into power, our wounds into wisdom. The path of power is not for everyone. It requires courage most people don't have. It demands honesty most people can't handle. It asks you to give up the comfortable lies that keep you small and safe and satisfied with less than you're capable of. But for those who choose it, for those who embrace their pain instead of running from it, for those who dance with their suffering instead of being destroyed by it, for them, Nietzsche promises something extraordinary: the privilege of owning yourself. In the end, that may be the only thing that matters. Not what others think of you, not whether you're successful by conventional standards, not whether you're happy in the shallow sense that most people understand happiness, but whether you're powerful, whether you're authentic, whether you're truly, terrifyingly, beautifully alive. The pain you've been running from is still there, waiting. It always will be. The question is, will you finally turn around and face it? Will you finally ask it what it wants to teach you? Because on the other side of that conversation lies everything you've ever wanted to become.